Continuing the life of Jesus of Nazareth, spiritually given by his Spirit through L.M. Arnold of Poughkeepsie, New York, describing his essence, his oneness with God, and his oneness with brethren. Well, if we use that oneness language, really he was just as much one with God as he was with his companions, and therefore, you don't have to, that proves away the whole divinity argument. But the preface. This book has been written by piecemeal in fragments, as it were, and in a way which has tried and proved my medium. First, his expectations were raised. Then he was disappointed. Opposition and argument from other believers in spiritual manifestations have shaken him rudely and violently, but his foundation was that of Peter. It was the rock of internal revelation, against which I have promised that neither man nor spirits should prevail. Now, speaking some form of Aramea, or something thereunto, basically the passage of the Bible would be rendered to say that that Peter was going to be so dense, that Peter is so dense that he's going to make it about Jesus, rather than his message. I have tried him by reverses of fortune, as men call the outward means of support in business, but I have sustained him in his afflictions, and strengthened him in his trials, because he has asked not me, but God for help, counsel, and instruction. Not that he despised me or my mediation, but because he would not subject himself to the possibility of delusion without appealing to that being who is all in all, who is so far one with me, that he has no other will than mine, because I have no other than his, because, though God is everywhere, and knows all, and notes all that occurs either externally or internally to mankind, he would not submit to any inferior being under any belief, resting on any other evidence that is sanctioned by God, through his action upon the soul or heart of man, and in such a way as reason and revelation made in former days to the servants of God and of Christ would justify and sustain. We really should be justified upon our own position. The trials he has been called to bear have purified him, as trials will purify every man who submissively receives them, and desires to be taught or instructed by them. Trials are from God, and temptations are suffered by him to approach the minds of men, to improve them and prepare them to be servants and sons. Let men then give God glory, praise, honor, and high renown, who chastises or blesses with chastisements their hopes, affections, or desires that are rested on anything but a willingness and desire to serve God first and last. Let man then kiss the rod of affliction, and lay hold of the staff of mercy, for God extends the one as he lays on the other. Let man seek God when he wants help, and remember that God does not dwell afar off, but that he is ever present, surrounding you more completely than the air you breathe, filling your body, mind, and soul ever and always, by night as by day, at home and abroad, for he is omnipresent and pervades all things. He who calls you is one with him, and fears not that you will prefer God to him, nor does God refuse the sacrifice offered to his Son any more than if offered to himself. Well, certainly we find this true with the demons, is that a lot of the demons, it's like, okay, I'll call you in to serve this other demon too. But never in Tanakh or any of the monotheist scriptures does God say, well, here's my agent, worship him, and it's as good as worshiping me. All that will may come, and partake of the waters of life freely, without money and without price. But you may also partake of them at the fountainhead, or at the lower stream that is issued from it. And it is the same water of life, pure and unmixed. But this I cannot easily make you to understand here. But in the second series of the history of the origin of all things, you may find it fully elucidated. Let all that will search and see if these things be so. For many shall say, Lo, here is Christ, or Lo, he is there. But go not forth, for except ye be reprobates, he is already with you in your heart. But then, content to have him abide there, and ask of him, or of God, that aid and guidance, that comfort or consolation, that love and sustentation of the body, are of the soul, that you feel yourself in want of. But remember that as your desire is, so shall your reward be. Desire then those things which are of God and are pure and holy. So, if you're not churchy, then God's not omnipresent. You can chase God out of your life, or at least Christ, who's supposed to be omnipresent according to the Christian doctrine. That's interesting, the level of power they say he can have over a supposed God. Let all then endeavor to seek the same God, one pure, holy, merciful, just, and of love and power are the great characteristics of the deity, and the former is bestowed with justice, and the latter exercised with wisdom and impartiality. Seek then this one God, infinite in every attribute, and possessing as attributes the power to raise men to his nature, so far as to be in harmony with him, and fit receptacles of his love, power to secure men eternal happiness, power to know evil, and to overcome it by love, which is the ruling principle of God's nature, the highest attribute he manifests to men. The pure benevolence, or love of God, is beyond the conception of mankind, but ideas finite can be formed of the infinite, not expressive of the infinite, only approximative to its expression. But by these approximations, man reaches nearer and nearer to God, and to a knowledge of him. He approaches him in nature, as he knows him better, and he leads the way to a reception of more knowledge by every acquisition of it. So man progresses to a knowledge of God, and to unity with him, who is indeed unapproachable and incomparably beyond the reach or comparison of his highest sons, whom he has brought to the next state of existence, to the Word, and even in some respects beyond the Word, in their attributes and qualities of character and action. Now, we can say that exemplar prophets were the Word. They not only received the revelations, but they had the inspired life to follow. And as I've showed otherwise, the son thing is something you choose to be. But see, God is incomparable to these sons of God. So, having thus set forth the kind of God you should look for and seek to know, compare him with the limited being which many claim should be worshipped, who made man to his disappointment and cursed him to his sorrow, who leads him by threats and forces him to be saved by a sacrifice of a superior being to an endless suffering. For the horror and degradation could not fail to be deeply impressed on that being's memory, and the perception that sacrifice had availed but to save a portion of the race which had endured all would be a constant torment, an everlasting thorn to rankle in the unhealed wounds of his glorified body. Compare him with that God you have worshipped, and if your God or your conception of him was not high enough to be beyond my conception or anyone's conception, elevate your standard of infinite excellence. For be assured, you can never conceive of God as more perfect, or more powerful, or more loving than He is. But your highest and most progressed ideas will still be as different from the reality as finite is from infinite. Let then every man strive to worship a purer and higher conception of superior intelligence called God. This is all that you can do profitably, perhaps, and this is your duty, as you cannot deny. Then, when you are told to be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, you will find it a meaning easily understood, and a command not utterly impossible to obey. For such as you are, you will in much conceive God to be, and such as you conceive Him to be, you can attempt to become in your own sphere of action. For man is the image of God, even as He makes God the image of Himself. For God made man like unto Himself, but He placed him in a different sphere of action and raises him gradually above grossness and contamination into purity and perfection. Or perhaps we fall from purity and perfection, or choose to maintain it. This is the God I call you to worship, our Father in heaven. Let us all be prepared to progress to meet Him. Let us all love Him, now as much as our natures and states of progress will admit. And so we shall all approach Him as nearly as is possible for us respectively to do. Let us be passive to His aid and active to exert ourselves to our best ability, for so we work ourselves and are worked upon. Thus we serve God acceptably and favorably to our happiness here and hereafter. Let us then strive to know God and be His servants, for such are His paths of duty, that He leads us to reach Him by submission and obedience. The last of my exhortation is to be perfect, as God, our Father in heaven, is perfect, and to him that overcometh will I give a white stone, on which shall be engraven His name, and the number of His name, who hath gained the victory. That is, my name shall be engraven on a pure mind, and I will know my people by their usefulness and by their sacrifices. Amen. I have extended my preface to the length of a discourse, but I desire that you may enter upon the perusal of this book with ardent desires to know and understand the truth, and to give this book its due position in your mind's estimation, for the time is at hand when I shall appear to men in my second coming, and shall pass from east to west with the rapidity and brightness of the lightning. Of the day and hour no man knoweth, and therefore all should be ready, and all should be willing to receive me in the way of my coming, be it outwardly or inwardly, be it in one or another form, in one or another position, authority, or place. Let all be ready and willing, for them will I come with power and glory, while those who oppose me shall be gathered for an overthrow, and shall be bound for an indefinite period, equal to a day of the Lord. Reader, pray earnestly that He will help you to perceive and receive the truth. You need not and ought not to fear to believe that, be it ever so new, ever so contrary to your former cherished opinions and expectations. Remember that the kingdom of God cometh not with, or according to, expectation, but that it is plainly shown in the writings of my disciples, that I did come in a way, and in a character expected and unrecognized by the church as it existed 1850 years ago, and that I am to be expected in the future in a blind and unknowing expectation that will not recognize me readily when I again come. Be then prayerful and unwearied in preparations for my reception, both internally and externally, in any and whatever way it may please God to have me appear to assume the government of the fifth monarchy that shall have no end in time or eternity. Okay, what are the first four monarchies? So it's not the three Reich system. The Christ Fellowship, the Christ Age Fellowship Commentary, talks about this fifth and final kingdom. It doesn't make that clear.